Hello everyone, glad to see you on my channel. Today we will listen to part 2 of the memoirs of Ramon Diestro, the Spanish commander of the Grenade Launcher Battalion of the Central Front. Subscribe to my channel and leave comments whose memoirs you would like to hear. We lived very friendly with the peasant fighters. We loved each other and we never had any disagreements. And this trip to the potato field turns into a sports competition between two teams, so typical of our ardent natures. Tight knots tied sleeves on shirts, a knot and on the collar, and 14 homemade bags are ready. We wish the gardeners a happy journey. Figueroa gives at the start friendly advice to the brigade of students, how to dig potatoes easier. Our brigade listens attentively to the potato instructions. In the 7 Diego de Mesa, Palacios, Pope, my brother, Pancho Video, Julio, Romeo, Castaneda. Carefully they sneak behind Pancho's 12 dishes. From stone to stone, from tree to tree, we watch with bated attention. The enemy has spotted them. Single shots are heard. We see how our 14 friends work with their little shovels, and how the enemy, who himself must have taken advantage of this dainty field, is frenzied. We, as gambling spectators of sports competitions, support our favourite winning team while the enemy growls angrily, sends curses, but he is powerless in his rage. They must be out of ammunition, Dilbale concludes as the single shots fall silent. And the gardeners are working frantically. They are sheltered from the enemy's trenches by a small hill, behind which they are almost safe. A languid hour and a half passes. The gardeners return with their precious burden by crawling. When they are quite close, we crawl out to meet them, helping to drag their sack shirts. While the fires are being built, the jury is counting the spoils. Every potato is counted. It's a long and tedious procedure. But then Lucandi calls us to silence and congratulates the 14 brave men on their victory. Our first gratitude is to those nameless toilers who, with their own hands, have achieved such a harvest. When we reclaim this land and its owners, peasants return here, we will return to them with more than all that we have gathered here today. We proclaim a loud hurrah and eagerly await the announcement of the results. Lucandi responds evasively. Happy victory, fellow soldiers, and cheerfully wishes us an appetite. No, de Taptin, carried from all sides, we comrade capital, who won. Lucandi pretends to point to his ears and pretends not to hear anything. Then the embarrassed sheriff rises and says, Nersin, please welcome the students to lunch at Las Navas. You have 230 more potatoes. We noisily discuss our victory and appoint Pancho Video as chef. He suggests baked potatoes for the first course, and we unanimously accept the menu. End of Derry night, we hear the distant rumble of engines. It's the rebels being trucked ammunition and weapons. We wait warily. On the 5th night of our trench life, we took out a mouthpiece and appealed to the deceived fascist soldiers to move to us. Pancho Video was a great expert in this negotiation. Not only are you being cheated, but you're not even being paid your wages. Pancho Video's words were carried on the horn. The other side was silent. If you wanted to smoke now, you have nothing, continued our friend. In the enemy trenches, someone swore. Pancho Video calmly replied. I would advise you to close your mouth and open it only when I bring you some cigarettes. We knew that all 3 days there was no tobacco in the enemy trenches. Don't you get tired of smoking Havana? We all chuckle, and Pancho Video asks in a feignedly sympathetic tone. Why don't you try selected tobaccos made from grass and cabbage leaves? Someone's distant voice utters from the darkness. Don't brag. You've tried this blend yourself long ago. Pancho Video grins good-naturedly, and suddenly for all of us, and for the enemy in the trenches, shout, Let us wager, soldiers, that we are richer than you. Here I alone have only 25 packs of the best cigarettes, and besides, in my pocket jingle, 130 pesetas. Silence reigns. And I, a common soldier of the Republic, donate it all to you. Agreed? There is silence in the enemy trenches. Do you really refuse? Shouts into the mouthpiece Pancho Video and repeats his question. Well, answer me, do you agree or not? Some timid voice suggests. We can trade for canned food. Having heard this proposal, we laugh loudly, letting the enemy know that we are very rich. We have even more canned food than cigarettes. Pancho Video rejects the deal. We are not merchants and we donate to you gratis. In the trenches, must be conferring. A moment later we hear, "Let one of yours go with the cigarettes." Panchovideo answers into the mouthpiece, "Auntie, I trust that you will do no mischief and will not rattle me in my presence." And he cheerfully warns, "Hey, I'm going out and I'm going to sing. I have no weapons on me, only cigarettes and my wages." Panchovideo rises and walks into the darkness. He is escorted by Lucandi for a moment. We know that Panchovideo has, besides cigarettes, about 40 issues of the communist newspaper Mundo Obrero. Long minutes of waiting pass. We hear Panchovideo's song. It is some cheerful couplets. But soon the distant voice disappears. We are all excited. How long has it been? There is silence on the other side. If anything had happened, we should have heard a shot or a scream. 3 minutes go by like this. Suddenly, we hear Panchovideo's mischievous verse again. He returns. We are ready to shout, welcoming our friend. The terrible darkness prevents us from seeing him, but here comes Panchovideo. He stumbles by our very trenches and comically reports. 38 issues of the Mundo Obrero, 25 packs of cigarettes, and 140 pesetas safely distributed. And our funnyman pulls out the physical evidence of being in the enemy trenches. 2 Moroccan fezzes and 1 soldier's hat. SO gift. I got it for a long memory. Our window agitator explains the origin of the hats. Bravo, friend. We congratulate our brave comrade, and each of us tries to embrace Pancho, shake his hand, pat him on the shoulder. Back then, we were only hot fighters, but bad strategists. It seemed to us that in the whole of Guadarrama there was no position more important than Las Navas, and put more batteries here and the Republic would be safe. But guns and knowledge were scarce in those days, and the enemy kept bringing in ammunition and did it almost openly with boastful frankness. From the hotels of the resort town, whence the soldiers in their spare hours admired the immaculate line of the White Peaks, we moved with all our household to a permanent residence in the trenches. The only artillerymen left in Las Navas were medics, philosophers, and farmers, who had had time to retrain under the command of Salinas, who still wore a holy raincoat, for which nicknames fans dubbed him Captain Coat. Las Navas was guarded by 4 guns. The best of them was still the one manned by a gun crew of mathematics professors from the University of Madrid. Every day at 5 o'clock in the morning. This punctuality was observed for about 10 days. The enemy began an artillery bombardment. The fire preparation was not followed by an attack by infantry, tanks, or aircraft. Poor Globe, you must be in great pain, said our little Gaffos bravely, adjusting his glasses with each shot. The rebel shells are hitting you mercilessly, and Gaffos shouted in the direction of the invisible enemy. Gunner? Hey, gunners. You better go to Salinas, he'll give you a lesson or 2 in gunnery. Apparently, the Nazi artillery is in the habit of firing at 5 o'clock sharp. I know what this is all about, Popeyes discovered one day. They don't want us to sleep through the marvellous picture of the dawn. It's the incredible cannonade in the mountains, where even a rifle shot, amplified 100-fold, is like thunder, did us no harm. The enemy must have been sparing the hotels of Las Navas, in which he hoped soon to rest. On our trenches, however, he could not get a good shot at them. We were much surprised at the aimlessness of his fire. These daily signals, which woke us up in the morning, were nicknamed by us Sereno. With our light hand, this word, which acquired a new meaning, went around the front. Sereno is the name given to night watchmen in Spanish towns and villages. Rural Serrano at a certain hour to inform the inhabitants of the weather. Midnight, they say in a chant as they walk around the sleeping streets. It's a full moon and so cold that the soles of their feet are tapping on the frozen ground like iron. But the village Sereno is not only a weather bulletin, but also a kind of alarm clock. The Sereno's when and who needs to be raised. In Las Navas, in the front line, we had an old man who could not understand how we could do without his services and get up at the same hour. The annoying artillery of the enemy, which daily reminded of itself at a certain hour, at 5 in the morning, we nicknamed Sereno. The morning artillery firing raised not only us from the earthen and damp beds of the trenches. As soon as the enemy's guns fell silent, we heard the guttural, protracted prayers of the Moroccans. They mournfully and long cried to heaven from this incomprehensible and alien land. They prayed, coming out from behind cover. The Moroccans must have believed that there was no force that could strike them when they spoke to their God. One day the Nazi artillery opened a hurricane fire. For 3 days we had to spend in the trenches. It was impossible even to rise, and we were on our knees in the trenches, not daring to stick our heads out. No, didn't they inherit the Krupp factories? Pancho Video used to quip these days. Julian Palacios, our famous track and field athlete, nicknamed Margarita Sergo for his ability to imitate the voice of a famous Spanish actress. Even at the front managed to carve out a few minutes for a little cross-country run. For 3 days he had to lie at the bottom of the trenches. He swore that it was the first time in his sports life that he had such a long break in training. Hey, I've forgotten the last time I stood up to my full height, Julian lamented. In the days of trench life we often heard our Lucandi coughing for long periods of time. The battalion doctor carefully offered him some powder, but Felice refused all help. At last, when the doctor declared that he would not leave until Lucandi had taken the medicine, the captain good-naturedly muttered, "You put too much trust in this far from miraculous powder," and sternly reminding the doctor of the responsibility he bore for divulging military secrets. Lucandi took him aside and told him of his long-standing and terrible disease, aggravated in the trenches, "Don't worry." The captain mumbled cheerfully, having read in the doctor's eyes that there was no means of saving him. "I promise you not to die of tuberculosis, but no one must know about my illness. You understand that every soldier wants to see his commander healthy," Lucandi warned sternly and concluded. "That is why my tuberculosis is almost a military secret." With us, this secret could not remain long-lasting. There were too many men in the battalion who had left the last years of medical school, and they easily recognized the origin of the commander's muffled and incessant coughing. Soon everyone knew about Lucandi's illness, but none of us gave any sign that the mystery had been solved. But Lucandi himself looked at us suspiciously when we began to remember Las Navas, where the air was so clear and pure. From now on we all believed that it was the duty of each of us to take care of the commander. In 2 weeks we spent in the trenches. During all this time there were only 2 enemy attacks, repulsed by us. Our losses were insignificant. A few wounded and 1 killed, a student Quartero, a very brave fighter, who died because of his carelessness. He grieved over this death. Quartero always seemed to think that bravery and carelessness were inseparable. He died when he rose to his full height under enemy fire, boasting of his fearlessness. He probably didn't love us, himself, or our future, if he could treat life that way, Lucandi said. We knew the reason for the long stay in place. Our artillery was still very weak and could not help the infantry to advance. But soon Salinas got rich. New guns arrived in Las Navas, and after a strong artillery preparation we left the trenches for the first time. The objective was to occupy the height of 1780. That morning, as intelligence reported, more than half of the Nazi soldiers left the trench to unload trucks with ammunition. Salinas took perfect aim at the trucks and opened devastating fire on them. This was the long-awaited signal to attack. 1,500 meters, separating us from the first fascist trenches, we ran with one spirit, ringing soles padded with large nails. This metallic ringing somehow invigorated us. From the loud stomping it seemed that there were a lot of us. More than in fact. Lucandi's cheerful voice was heard all the time, with short appeals. "Friends, forward. Soon we will finish them off." He wanted to insinuate that there were no obstacles for us. At the trenches of the first line, a huge Moroccan suddenly rose from behind the rocks, forcing me for a second almost to sink into the ground. He was even more frightened of me than I was of him. Twisting my Spanish to make it sound like the slang he understands, I shout, "Drop your weapon." He obediently drops the rifle and raises his hands. Then I notice that on his belt hangs a Moroccan knife, which is usually awarded to brave warriors. This deadly weapon is made of pure silver. I knew such knives existed. Thus, unbuckle it. I calmly order the Moor to unbuckle it with one hand and throw it on the ground. He slowly unbuckles his weapon from the buckle and reluctantly throws it at my feet. I bend over, keeping my rifle pointed at the Moor, and pick up my trophy. Understandably, all of this happens in a brief instant. Infernal gunshots are heard all around, echoed by the mountain tops. I have seen captured opponents before this unexpected encounter, but never have I met them as I do now, face to face. Hitherto all my enemies had either shot at me or lay breathless on the ground. Now the enemy is my prisoner and stands before me. I make him go to the covers, where a group of our fighters will guard the captured fascists. After a few minutes, having surrendered the Moroccan, I go back. I have a trophy rifle hanging on my shoulder and a silver knife on my belt. I am having a lot of fun and I rush off, catching up with my comrades who have gone ahead. After running another 1.5 kilometers after the first enemy trenches, I reach the height of 1780. I find Louis Delbao, my lieutenant. He is next to Lucandi in a chain that snakes from cover to cover, using every rock and tree. An invisible machine gun, skillfully concealed, mows down our ranks. Lucandi points somewhere ahead and suggests, "We must locate and destroy." I have binoculars. I try to find the hidden enemy. No, my eyesight alone won't help. I lower the binoculars and try to hear where the jet of fire is coming from. I think I can guess the direction of the fire, but will I be able to destroy the enemy machine gun with one grenade? I don't want to go back, so I continue crawling. Bullets whistle over my head, but now they're falling close. Did they see me? No, it's my imagination. But why does the rifle suddenly feel heavy in my hand? I try to lift it, but I can't. Then I gently place the weapon beside me and feel my right hand. How did I not notice before that the sleeve of my overalls was soaked with blood like a sponge? I crawl back and, turning around, try not to lose the direction of the machine gun. The forest suddenly becomes dense. Instead of one bush, 10 grow in my eyes at once. I feel terribly drowsy. There is a deafening noise in my ears, as if I had dived into the water. I have to overpower my extinguished will. I scream, but I can't hear my voice, and then I feel a huge mountain bearing down on me. Someone lifts my head. I see Lucandi's big grey eyes with red lights. 600 meters. Right behind that rock, I whisper. Lucandi nods his head. It's nice in the trenches. I've never noticed before that it's so warm and cosy at the bottom of the trenches. I am told that the height of 1780 has been taken. I have slept for 3 long hours. My arm is bandaged and no longer hurts as it used to. Only my head is dizzy, but it is from blood loss. Soon a car comes and takes us and several wounded. To Madrid. I really want to see my brother, but he is far away at an altitude of 1780. As we drive away, I shout to my friends, "Tell Alberto to fight for 2. I'll be back soon." Our little tourist car, converted into an ambulance, rushes through the bustling streets of Madrid. Here is Castellano Boulevard with its opulent palaces. I try not to miss house number 56. Not so fast. I ask the chauffeur, no matter how much time passes, no matter what events happen, I will never forget the few minutes I spent in this house, from which I came out a real fighter, with a rifle on my shoulder and a People's Militia ID in my pocket. I sit with the chauffeur and nod to the house where I first saw Lucandi. The grey building arouses unexpected interest in the driver of the ambulance as well. Mapelmacos is coming up. You'll be cured there in 1 day, he promises me. That's where they want to take me, to the ophthalmologists. You're confused. Why do I need ophthalmico? And I point to my bandaged hand. But my chauffeur explains that all the hospitals in Madrid are busy with only one thing. Treating the wounded, and at the ophthalmico eye clinic has also been turned into a military hospital. I'm taking you to the best one, the hospital expert says soothingly. We drive down a street parallel to the one where I live, which is close to my house. I think it would be a good idea to run in there for a minute and leave the Moroccan knife with the nurses. Will they take it away, do you think? So I hold out my trophy for inspection. The chauffeur gives me dozens of different tips on how to keep the knife safe, and tells me some fantastic story about a wounded soldier who managed to hide a machine gun under his mattress. But here comes the austere 5-story ophthalmico hospital. I never thought that in a few months I would be back here again, with a severe wound. The orderlies are waiting for us at the entrance. Among the young men and women in white coats are many familiar faces. I don't know their names, but they are all students at the University of Madrid, and we have met quite often recently. No, thank you. I say when they offer me a stretcher, I can easily walk myself. I look at the faces of the women in white coats. Will I find Francis Chiarina's mother among them? She works in some hospital in Madrid, and Popayes has quipped that the 4th Battalion can rest easy. It now has its own mediator between life and death. The large, high-ceilinged, white-walled ward is stacked with beds. My bed is by the window. To get to it, you have to walk across the room. But it's not easy. The wounded pester me with questions. I stop, not knowing who to answer first. They ask about the fate of their friends, mention names I've never heard, and are quite surprised when I answer that I've never met any of their buddies. Where am I from? Where did I fight? What party do I belong to? Is my commander good? Is my wound dangerous? And do I have a mother? The questions are too many to count. Sister Julia, a philosophy student, informs me of the inevitable interrogation of every newcomer. Everyone is greeted in the same way, and I am obliged to answer. My neighbours are a lightly wounded 16-year-old boy and an adult peasant with no legs, which Julia sadly warns me about. We get acquainted. No, says the peasant, extending his hand. The Pefe, the boy tries to introduce himself as seriously as possible. I'm a scout. All I have to do is tell you my name and we're friends. Do you know Lister? Pedro gives me a probing look, trying to impress me with an unexpected question. Who in the Republic does not know this combat organizer and commander of the heroic 5th Regiment? I've heard of him. I answer with feigned indifference. We serve together, Pedro informs me, and continues to stare at me, wanting to find out what impression this message has made. Pippi winks. He and I are already in cahoots. He gestures to let me know that I am playing my part correctly and that I should remain indifferent. I don't say a word. Then Pedro mysteriously tells me that he is a participant in the battles of Morato de Tohuna. Here I really get stumped. It's a historic village. Pedro explains. It was threatened to be taken by Quipo Delano, but Lister beat him to it. Pedro chuckles and tells me how a chatty fascist general broadcast on the radio that his favourite wine was made in the village of Morato de Tohuna, and that he would take the village to drink wine. Then our commander said that the taste matched. The workers and peasants, it turns out, like the same wine as General Quipo Delano. Ward laughs. It's probably not the first time the wounded have heard this story from Pedro's mouth. And do you know what Lister did? He sent a telegram to Seville. General, wrote our commander, Morato de Tohuna is not yet occupied by anyone, but we decided to take it early because after you we risk finding nothing in the wine cellars. Is the wine really good? Someone from the other end of the room asks. A dream bottled, Pedro replies with a serious look. But we are not drunkards, he announces. When we took Tohuna, we drank only one sip, and that was for the victory of the Republic. Sister Julia stands there and smiles good-naturedly. So much for the folk epic, she says to me quietly. You'll hear wonderful stories here. The doctor finds that my wound is not dangerous, but will not heal before 2 weeks. Then I make a list of books and hand it to Julia. She glances at it and makes a friendly promise. Well, if you've decided to become an academic in 15 days, I'll help you with that. There are almost 20 titles of books on military matters in my inventory. The next day Julia appears in the chamber with a huge bundle. Here are all the wisdoms I have decided to learn. Armed with a pencil, I immediately embark on 2 new classes, but equally difficult. Writing with my left hand and the study of features of infantry fighting in the mountains and wooded areas. In the hospital, friendship is as touching as in the trenches. Everyone is ready to share the last cigarette. Read letters aloud tell dreams. There are endless photos of brides, mothers and sisters. The noise annoys Pedro. We know this and try to keep quiet when we see him suffering. 3 times a day we get radio reports about the situation on the fronts. Then Pedro rises, trying to sit down. It's better to hear. He tells us when we want to make him comfortable. At favourable news he cries with joy and sends terrible curses if the enemy advances. Mother visits me daily. At 8 o'clock in the morning she is already at my bedside, and the nearer the day of our parting, the heavier are the rolls she brings with her. I long to thank her for all her care, but I have nothing but a Moroccan knife which I managed, with Julia's help, to keep with me. I give my mother this gift she doesn't understand. From me and Alberto, I solemnly hand her the trophy. My friends at the hospital are very pleased with this scene, but my mother is somewhat embarrassed by the terrible gift. Then I point out a place where the Moor's weapon can find practical use, our kitchen. On this condition, the knife is carried home. Besides Mother and Sister Julia, I have another frequent visitor, Francisco's mother. She works here at the Ophthalmico Hospital, affectionately calls me her second son, and finds time to drop by, even though she is in another room. Every time she visits, I have to prepare some story about Francisco. Mother Urino knows the whole life of the 4th Battalion. She knows about the adventures of Pancho Video, about Lucandi's illness. She names dozens of soldiers and speaks of them all in such detail and warmth as if she had not learned about them from her son's letters, but had known them all for a long time. She knows nothing about only one soldier of our battalion, her Francisco. Pope writes nothing about himself. That's why I have to act as a dutiful narrator. Nothing seems to be forgotten, and my friend's mother is eternally grateful. But the soldier's mother is unlike any most loving and caring mother. Her love for her soldier son is incomparable. You must have forgotten something, asks Urania's mother. She looks at me and waits for new stories not yet told. Is Francisco wearing the same sweater? Oh, I almost forgot. How nice of you to remind me. I'm trying to be polite and I'm showing remarkable powers of observation. Poppy has broken all records by wearing 4 sweaters at once. Well, here's an unexpected opportunity for more questioning. It's all my fault for talking too much. No. Who's Popeye? Francisco's mother is perplexed. I with difficulty suggest to the mother of my friend that this nickname does not disgrace the brave fighter Urina, and that under this nickname he became even more dear to us. But soon I see Popeye himself, perfectly unharmed, noisily pacing the ward in an unfamiliar garb. A white coat, he approaches my bunk. He is in Madrid on an assignment from the regimental commander Marcos. Popeye is not only a gunner now. He demands that I listen to him sitting down and jokingly reports. Notice, Comrade Sergeant, you are welcomed to this closed boarding house by the 4th Battalion's communications officer. It turns out that we're getting damn rich and we're getting a radio farm. That's why he came to Madrid. Rid suddenly recalls Popeye's and pulls out of his pocket dozens of scraps of paper. These are letters from friends. Diego de Mesa warns me in a small preface that all this is the independent work of his students, who give their free time to the letters and triumph childishly when they fill a page. There's still an abyss of spelling errors here, but I'm happy with the message of friends. We laugh with Pope at a letter from an Extremaduran fighter who, in a serious tone, suggests that I feel myself on all sides. Maybe it seemed to you, Ramon, that the bullet caught your arm? None of us can believe it. It concludes with peasant humour, because we think you are impenetrable. I eagerly question Pay about all the news. There has been no major fighting these days. The battalion is still occupying the positions it has taken from the enemy, with occasional skirmishing and cozying up in the occupied trenches. Pay's short report makes me feel happy for my comrades. To a man on the home front, the reasons for the joy of the frontline soldiers are not always clear. The reasons are varied, and sometimes they seem trifling, the capture of a hill which the enemy occupied before us. A day passed without loss and even 2 hot potatoes when the wagons failed to bring in food. I pranked Pancho so well that they are still laughing, Popeyes reports with a sly look. Do you want to know? And Francisco, who has aroused the particular curiosity of my neighbours, tells loudly so that everyone can hear him. It is a long story of how Popeye, wishing to test the vigilance of Pancho, who was that night on guard duty, declared himself a defector and, changing his voice, began to ask at a distance of 50 meters about the conditions of the transition to the side of the Republicans. Pancho Video guaranteed his invisible enemy. The night was dark and moonless. Life, liberty, and promised to forget all his sins. When the repentant foe was about to cross, all doubts were dispelled. Puppy guiltily questioned Pancho Vidi. But I am not a mere soldier. I am a rebellious general. Will you not shoot me? No. Decisively, like an oath, says the shocked Pancho. Then I'm coming to you. Raise your hands, Pancho warns him just in case. Poppy walks with his hands up and, approaching Pancho, whispers, You can't tell the difference between a Republican fighter and a rebel general. Everyone in the ward is pleased with my friend's story, and the wounded men discuss the story at length. AP leaves. I want to get back to the battalion as soon as possible. I firmly demand that the doctor discharge me early. He shakes his head negatively and says, Nobody wants you like this. Well, squeeze your fingers into a fist, he suddenly suggests me. It doesn't work. The doctor sees how fruitless the attempts are. He makes a firm promise. In 5 days you'll be able to hit the table with your fist, and then we'll part as friends, I give you my word. 5 days, then. The thought of returning to my unit fills my heart with a special kind of joy. Is it possible to compare with anything this second service, when friends in the trenches meet a comrade from a hospital? And with a special force, I was drawn to the front on the penultimate night of my stay in the hospital, when a deafening rumble lifted us out of bed. We hear in the sky an ominous rumble, bringing death. Helpless, unarmed, we felt for the first time the full tragedy of the home front. Doctors and nurses rush around the wards. They flick switches, turning off the lights. We send a curse to the enemy who raided the sleeping Madrid. The anti-aircraft gunners and pilots are especially excited. Each of them seems that are somewhere slow now, and let them to the batteries, airplanes. They would teach the enemy a lesson, but soon the ward became quiet. Silence also outside the windows. The airplanes, having dropped their deadly cargo, flew away. But we can't sleep for a long time and lie silent. Only my little neighbour Pape, wounded in the arm, he mumbles something in his sleep and suddenly shrills throughout the room. "Step on that machine gun. Don't be afraid." The ward silently listens to the short words, born of the inflamed imagination of a 16-year-old fighter. And he does not calm down and all night long leads his imaginary unit into battle. Here we are on the 5th day. I return the books I read to Julia. From the hospital I run home, where friends and family are waiting for me. True, I am not yet pounding my fist on the table as the doctor promised, but the pencil has already been transferred from my left hand to my right hand, and I demonstrate it to the nursing staff during ward rounds. I'm discharged today. We exchange addresses with fellow patients. I have a list of almost every major city in Spain and many villages. We seriously promise each other to undertake a tour of these towns and villages immediately after the last shot is fired on the fronts. I take away with me pictures of my ward mates. My neighbour Pedro is pictured with his 2 sons. In this picture he is shown full length. "See," he says, giving me this relic. "I wasn't always like I am today." And, pointing to his sons, he says, "They'll avenge their father. It takes a hell of a lot of strength to walk out of here with dry eyes." Pedro abruptly turns his back on us. We try not to look at him. Pedro is crying. I reach the door and raise my fists. "Viva la Repubblica." The whole chamber responds hastily and excitedly, "Viva." In my pocket I have a certificate from the hospital that I have recovered from the wound and am fit for service at the front. True, my arm is still in a bandage, but that's not more than 2 or 3 days. I spend a few hours at home. My older sister loads me up with touching gifts for my battalion friends, her little students. My sister was the director of a pedagogical institute, and now the children of fighters live and study in her institution, knitted us woolen socks and gloves. My mother puts the best pieces in my plate, as if she wants to feed me until the end of the war. "Mother, have mercy," I tell her. "Believe me, I'll be hungry again tomorrow." I struggle to get up from the table. The whole family wants to walk me to the barracks, where I have to get into a car going to Las Navas. I discourage the family. Finally, this family attack is repelled. I go to the headquarters, present my certificate of recovery, and, after getting a seat in the car, I rush towards Guadarrama. A continuous cannonade accompanies us all the way. In Las Navas, I am struck by the complete absence of people in the streets. At the regimental headquarters, I meet the regimental commander, Comrade Marcos. He shakes my hand in a friendly manner and, smiling, informs me, "I have 2 stars prepared for you." 2 stars are the sign of a lieutenant. The regimental commander congratulates me on my promotion and, justifying himself, explains the situation does not allow, unfortunately, to produce everything with the solemnity required by the statute. The regimental commander replaces the usual ceremony of dedication to rank with a few business and comradely wishes. He gives me the content of the order of the Minister of War and pins 2 stars to the sleeve of my overalls. In the meantime, stay at headquarters, and he briefly tells me about the fierce artillery preparation that began 2 hours ago. I can sense from Marco's anxious face that he's not telling me everything. I beg him to let me go into the trenches. Finally, he agrees. "Now you are a man of many families," Marco says in parting, "and you have a large family of 50 people. Take care of them." One of the staff commanders goes with me to the hut, turned into an armory, and passes the order of the commander to write off my rifle and give me an automatic pistol. This procedure, while I part with the rifle, the weapon of the fighter and sergeant, and receive the pistol, takes a good 20 minutes. Then I hurry along the road I know well to the trenches of the 4th Battalion. Smoke is billowing here. The ground is dug up with countless shell craters, and my throat is sore from the unaccustomed smell of sulphur after a long break. The rumble of the guns is unbearable. Machine guns are getting into the fight. Before I can distinguish my comrades in the distant trenches, half an hour of fast walking passes. Someone waves a red handkerchief at me. I am recognized by the white patch standing out against my blue overalls. I run toward the trenches. Suddenly I hear a mock song to the tune of the Pioneer March Samus Pioneeros, blaring on someone's command. At the very trench my friends pick me up in their arms and carry me down. The singers hop on one foot and hold onto my ear. That's how we sing this cheerful song. Lucandi embraces me, still holding a red handkerchief. It was he who waved it at me. The terrible artillery rumble does not prevent everyone from noisily expressing their feelings. Only Popeye is serious and does not participate in the fun. Our professor of cleanliness is even fatter and indescribably dirty. He is sitting in a funnel dug by a shell. The funnel is filled with water, but Popeye is unfazed in his new role as a communicator. In his hands he holds a telephone receiver. He nods silently at me in greeting. "You're in luck," he shouts to Felice. "From a hospital bed straight into battle." Lucandi takes me by the sleeve and speaks fatherly. "Congratulations on your stars, Comrade Lieutenant." We make our way through the trench. The captain leads me to my platoon. To the whistle of bullets and bursting shells, Lucandi introduces me to the men as their new lieutenant. I don't know how long he would have talked if he hadn't been interrupted by a shell falling nearby. We freeze in place. The communications point where Popeye had just stood is raised to the ground. We crouch still lower to the ground, pressed down by the current of air from the shell that has passed over us. But is Francisco killed? A large puddle begins to move suddenly, and a wet Popeye rises from the water. He still has his pipe in his hands, shouts something nonchalantly, and finally jumps into our trench and gives Lucandi a short telegram from headquarters. "Let the enemy come within 300 meters and destroy." Lucandi turns to us and loudly gives the command. "Stop talking." Silence reigns. We wait to see what the captain of the 4th Battalion will say to his men. We can't think of better weather for the battle than today. It's snowing wet and thick. The wind is piercing, liquid mud squelches under our feet. We are silent and motionless. A machine gun hail sweeps over the trenches. With a ringing roar, raising clouds of stones, shells burst. Artillerymen work better than machine gunners. This we have to admit with regret. "Do not start firing without orders," says our commander. And most importantly, to shoot better than the enemy. That's the whole of his speech. But even now, when all the air is full of deadly sounds and only minutes remain before we enter the battle, this speech makes us all smile involuntarily. Lucandi speaks, turning to one side or the other. The unhappy feelings that had possessed some of the fighters disappear. Our old man has a way of dispelling ennui. "What a man!" Pancho whispers to me enthusiastically, and on behalf of all the men says to the captain, "We can't shoot badly, Comrade Lucandi, and we don't have so many cartridges that we can't hit the target. We are waiting for the order to start firing. A single shot, even an accidental one, always finds many imitators, and we, to avoid indiscriminate shooting, keep an eye on each other. The men are as calm as ever, and it is the first time they have come under such heavy fire. The enemy is not far away. A high hill, a very favourable cover, hides the enemy. The mortars are already firing from there. Everyone has long since chosen a place and has grown into a trench. The enemy has found our trench. Shells explode in catastrophic proximity. The ground shakes. Gaffos grunts and whispers to... That's a real Vesuvius. But suddenly the trench falls, and we slip from our seats. An impenetrable veil of earth stands before our eyes. "Stay where you are," Lucandi ordered as the men rushed to my platoon's aid from all sides. We hastily rake the ground and pull our comrades out. The shell hit accurately this time. "Take care of your new family," I recall Marca's parting words. How soon, however, Death visited us. I don't yet know even the names of my first fallen platoon mates. The sergeant counts the casualties in a fallen voice. 3 dead and 7 wounded. Lucandi distracts us from our sorrowful thoughts. "Attention," he shouts. "Let us not be sad, friends. We have suffered many casualties, but we are outnumbered." He speaks these words with indomitable strength and courage. Yes, we are outnumbered. I have often thought of Lucandi's words. Apparently, we are destined to meet only Moroccans. cheering themselves with guttural, completely inimitable sounds. The avalanche of Moors rolls. We are calm. The 4th Battalion has faced them many times before. The main thing is to calculate correctly. Here it is, the moment guessed by a gut feeling. Now, when all of us have chosen our targets and are ready at any moment to open a destructive fire on the enemy, we hear the voice of the battalion commander. Yes, fire, friends. At this order, all our weapons, our small-caliber guns, mortars, machine guns, rifles, immediately come into action. Using one healthy hand, I also try to take part in the battle. I press the trigger with the finger of my left hand. It turns out that to hit the enemy, no special marksmanship is required today. The Moors show complete disregard for death. They run without bending. This still shocks us and makes us shudder. Apparently, they continue to be fed the old fables that the Reds have nothing but sticks and hunting rifles.
Haindy repeats the command with fury.
Fire, friends. The men bearing down on us fall in increasing numbers, incinerated by the lead fire. All the Republican fighters have one desire: to repel the attack, and we relentlessly load our rifles and fire. Only the loners reach the trenches. The rest stop their frantic running on the way to our trenches. The fight lasted 2 hours. We did not leave the trenches. The attack was repulsed. Stunned by the hurricane fire, black with mud, tired, we sit silently in the earthen recesses, listening to the silence. It came unexpectedly. Next to us lie our dead comrades. We look at them and feel our hatred for the enemy growing. Fatigue disappears. We want to go forward and hear Lukandi's short command. Fire, friends? There are 40 men in my platoon. We go to pick up weapons, count the spoils. The battalion remains in the trenches. One more night and tomorrow we will be replaced. 40 men are divided into 4 groups. We put in the agreed place weapons removed from the killed Moroccans and abandoned by the fugitives. Behind the rocks we suddenly notice people lurking. We fall to the ground. Drop the weapons, I shout. I am answered in clear Spanish, and there is a chuckle in the speaker's tone. Don't be frightened. There are only 3 of us. We cautiously approach the rocks. Behind the cover, an officer in the uniform of the regular fascist army is half lying down. Next to him are 2 Moroccans. The officer is wounded and apparently unable to get up. His face is surprisingly familiar to me. Where have I seen him? While I am trying in vain to remember, I am interrupted by the same mocking voice. I didn't expect to be picked up by my co-worker. Colleague? Yes, he is a former student at the University of Madrid, an ardent monarchist who boasted of his ancient lineage and his loyalty to the exiled king. You don't recognize him? Yes, I do. You were in your last year at the Faculty of Commerce. He puts his hand to his headdress and says, hiding a grin, Are you already a lieutenant, Diestro? I don't want to exercise my right of victory and politely offer to the any. If you are tired, we will take you to Las Navas on a stretcher. Instead of answering, he asks, Are you wounded too? And nods at my bandage. Yes, I'm wounded, but not seriously. Too bad. The Nazi remarks ambiguously. I leave 2 fighters near the officer and the Moroccans and continue to walk around the field. On the way back, I approach them again. Fascist student makes a pompous speech about the fate of Spain. Look, I reply, calmly listening to his speech. Look at your army and the army of the Spanish people. You have hired Moroccans, Italians, Germans. We have only Spaniards. You are selling your country to Italy and Germany, and we are breaking this shameful deal with blood. Let's go. I dryly suggest, colleague, I'll take you to Las Navas to the headquarters. The officer rises with difficulty. He rejects the stretcher again. The only thing he is willing to accept from me is cigarettes. Nice. Don't say no before the firing squad, he says wryly. We walk for a long time. In Las Navas was already Lucandi. He was urgently summoned to headquarters for a meeting. I handed over the prisoners and returned to the trench. In the morning, after waiting for a replacement battalion, we went to Las Navas to rest. The position of Mangar's column deteriorated. Navalparul, which we were guarding on the Las Navas side, came under heavy attack from the opposite direction and was almost destroyed by aerial bombardment. When the 4th Battalion arrived for a 2-day rest, the streets of Las Navas were filled with unfamiliar fighters. These were the last defenders of Navalparul who had left yesterday. The headquarters, which had met all night, had decided to evacuate Las Navas. It was not a retreat, but a withdrawal to a height 4 kilometers away, where it was necessary to fortify. Lucandi opposed the evacuation of Las Navas. He argued with conviction. We are setting a trap into which we may fall ourselves. Finally, after much debate, Lucandi declared, "You can fortify when you have arms and ammunition." The defense of the heights could only be successful if we had sufficient arms. We had none. Then Lucandi suggested a seemingly very simple solution: to arm ourselves with the enemy's weapons. On Mount Sierra Cartagena, small enemy units had large weapons. Lucandi unfolded a plan, thought out to the smallest detail. 200 men attack under cover of night on the enemy posts on Sierra Cartagena and take away the weapons. The attack is made from two sides. The men of the 4th Battalion and Carlos Battalion come forward. This operation achieves two goals. Said at a meeting of the regimental commanders Lucandi, "We arm ourselves and neutralize the height of Sierra Cartagena." Lucandi's plan raised serious doubts. After all opponents of the plan had spoken, Lucandi, instead of replying, briefly promised the assembled men, "I give my word as a communist and a soldier of the Republic that if we are allowed to attack the enemy, we will get rich this night." A representative of the War Ministry, who was present at the regimental commanders' meeting, agreed with Lucandi's argument. Then the regiment commander Marcos proposed to prepare to attack the height of Sierra Cartagena. There are two battalions, the 2nd and 4th, 100 men from each. Our 100 is commanded by Lucandi, the 2nd Captain Carlos, a Madrid construction worker, and Lieutenant Colorado, a student of construction. We take the initial position. Our battalions are far apart and connected only by telephone wires. "Check your watch against Carlos's watch," Lucandi says dryly. Popeyes hands me the handset of the field phone. Nathan Honorado at the phone. "Let's check your watch, Comrade Lieutenant. Mine reads 12 sharp. I'll give you the hour and minutes of the conditional performance. 24 hours and 2 minutes. Not a single sound, not a single cigarette. Our 100 is divided into 5 groups, and we're moving out. It was still snowing sticky snow. We go guessing by instinct, where in this black night we are waiting for bumps, stones, ditches. We try to overcome the obstacles as quietly as possible, straining our eyesight to the point of pain. We maintain complete silence. My group of 20 stops, here where nothing seems to be distinguishable but the ground beneath the logs. At precisely 1 o'clock in the morning our rendezvous with the Colorado must take place. The same rendezvous is to take place at 4 other points. We creep along in the dark. The going is getting harder and harder. The climb to Sierra Cartagena has begun. Lucandi goes first. He falls over from foot to foot, and, quickly waving his arms, as if in a gymnastic class, so precise are his movements, drag others with him. Only Popeye is unperturbed. He lags behind and whispers to the soldier trailing the column, "They think I'm the battalion dog and will always catch up with them." A blinding short flash and the sound of rifle fire remind us that we have gone into battle, not on a night out. We have been spotted. Shots follow one after another. We rush forward toward the summit. A machine gun opens fire about 20 meters away. We creep up to it and silently pounce on the 2 machine gunners shooting the ribbons. We turn the Gotchkis around and open fire on the glowing windows of the barracks. Even Lucandi didn't expect us to be able to use the enemy's weapons so soon. But we can't delay. 10 kilometers from here is a whole regiment of the enemy. Hurry up, grab the guns and get down there. 7 machine guns, 5 mortars, about 200 rifles, boxes of ammunition, all these trophies in a quarter of an hour carried from the top. Almost the entire garrison. Fell 45 Moroccan and Spanish fascists. Raising their hands, go surrounded by our fighters. These are the prisoners. 3 guns, which we cannot carry away, are destroyed. The formidable height is turned into a peaceful hill. We still hold for a few minutes under fire the road, from whence reinforcements may come to the enemy and then leave the summit of Sierra Cartagena. Quickly we run down the mountain. Our Colorado suddenly stops and fumbles on the ground. "Lost my glasses," he mumbles confusedly. We can't linger a second longer and rush him. A stream of machine gun fire sweeps over us like a downpour. Colorado and I catch up with those who have gone ahead. Often, stumbling, we fall and, getting up, run on. Now we have only one goal, to reach Las Navas without loss and with precious cargo. Next to us, someone takes a hard fall. No, Carlos, Colorado calls out. The fallen man is silent. Nutite. We shout fearfully and stop. Lucandi bends over and babbles helplessly. No, it can't be. It can't be. This death is sudden and tragic. We pick up Carlos, hit by a stray bullet, and carry him in our arms all the way to Las Naves. Our victorious column now looks like a funeral procession. 5 commanders, Lucandi, Colorado, DSL Baal. My brother and I see carrying Carlos' body in our arms, are the last to enter Las Naves, closing the sad procession. It is already light. In front of the headquarters stand the mortars and machine guns, carried away from Sierra Cartagena. We pass by the trophies. Marcos comes out to meet us, pale but calm. His voice is full of bitterness. Congratulations on your victory, Lucandi. He shakes hands with our commander, and then turns abruptly and loudly begins. My comrade soldiers, eternal memory to the proletarian hero, Captain Carlos Ap. Today we're seeing Delbel off. Jose Cazola, chief of the Republican militia, needs combat commanders to form new units. Our regiment has been asked to allocate 5 lieutenants and immediately send them to Madrid at the disposal of headquarters. Marcos is upset. In all this time, we have not received a single new man, and we are still required to give 5. I'm one of those 5. Lucandi does not want to part with me and Luis. He takes me aside and asks me with a puzzled expression, "How does Cazorla know your names?" The list says, "So from the 4th Battalion to 2nd Louis del Baal and Ramon Diestro. Maybe that's what you want, then tell me what you're unhappy about." "My dear Grouse, I'm as upset as you are. Will any of your men agree to leave you voluntarily? But an order is an order. You said so yourself, you have to obey it." I am silent, and I say all this speech to myself. Lucandi breaks the pause. "No, so I'm right. He says bitterly. You yourself asked headquarters to transfer you out of here. We didn't ask anyone. I tried to convince the captain. We were chosen only because Cazorla remembered his old friends from the youth union. The regiment sends urgent telegrams, defends us in every possible way, and finally succeeds in temporarily cancelling the order. Instead of the 5, the chief of the militia of the Republic, 23-year-old Cazorla, a member of the Central Committee of the United Union of Socialist Youth, demands to send 1 Delbel. A 4th Battalion is lined up outside headquarters. Lucandi makes a short speech. He talks about the bitterness of parting with Louis. "You will have a new commander." The captain addresses the platoon, which was commanded by Del Baal. He is a common soldier, a brave and loyal son of the Republic. "You know him," Lucandi concludes, smiling enigmatically. The men look at their commanders as if they want to read the answer on their faces, but we don't know anything yet, and Figueroa, our sheriff, mumbles in bewilderment. This is a problem with 3 unknowns. We are all fighters, brave men and loyal sons of the Republic. Lucandi loudly and solemnly announces. "You're right, Figueroa, and let's all congratulate Pancho Video together." We're damn glad. Pancho is embarrassed. He tries to hide in the back rows, but the regimental commander calls him forward, reads out the order of appointment in front of the whole battalion, and pins 2 stars on the sleeve of the new lieutenant. The battalion gives a farewell dinner to Delbel. Pancho's got 3 bottles of champagne somewhere. We get a sip of wine for all the many toasts. We wish our friend good luck and ask him to shave off the huge beard he has grown over the months in Madrid. "Will we see each other again?" Luis says quietly to me as we get into the car. He's very pale today. "I will," I reply cheerfully. "You have to form a fighting unit and come here with it." The car takes off. We stare after it for a long time. Alas, I met Del Baal sooner than I expected. 11 days after Del Baal's departure, Marcos received a call from Madrid, informing him that a former lieutenant of his regiment had been mortally wounded. 40 kilometers from Madrid, in San Martin de Valdeiglesias, there was fierce fighting. Here and fought a new military unit of the Republic, a battalion named Fernando de Rosa, commanded by Captain Louis del Baal. Marcos summoned me and informed me, trying to soften the information I had received about our friend. "Del Baal is lying in the hospital in San Carlos. It's nothing serious, but we have to go and see him. We've decided to send you. Whatever happens, don't delay and come back tomorrow." That evening I was already at the familiar San Carlos University Hospital. How many times had I waited here for Louis Delbay, a medical student? He would run out in a white coat and always apologize 2 minutes and I'll be free. And here I am excitedly entering the corridor. Professor Olivares, Louis's favorite teacher, is walking towards me. Professor, I was sent here from the front by your student Delbal's comrades. How is he feeling? Olivares puts his hand on my shoulder and says,
Go back, friend. You won't help anything. Tell him that the surgeon Cardinique and I will do our best.
Is it really that serious? Harry, he's been unconscious for 24 hours. He's got 2 wounds. I'm asking to be admitted to Delbay's room. He's lying alone in a small room. His mother is sitting next to him. She cries harder at the sight of me and almost screams. Look what they've done to him. Look! Louis is lying with his eyes closed. Is it him? I can't see anything but his nose and eyes. His whole head is bandaged. The famous physician Cardinac enters the room.
I leave a friend I can do nothing for. Next door is a ward for the lightly wounded. I go in.
Is there anyone here from Fernando de Rossi's battalion? There are dozens of people answering my question. Murty, tell me how it all happened. I say to one of the wounded, I'm a comrade of your captain. Our captain is a hero. The wounded man answers me. We marched so fearlessly under fire that there was no one who dared to lag behind him. Someone unhappily interrupts the narrator. It's easy to run when there are no bullets in you, but in our captain there was one in his lung, and the other one got into his cheek and came out near his eye. The third fighters with conviction. No one would go like that, but he went and led us. I thanked the wounded and left. From the clinic I go to the Central Committee of the Youth Union. Here I have dozens of unexpected and pleasant meetings. In one of the rooms where I was forced to sit down and urgently write a note about the heroic deeds of my fighters. Members of the Union, I meet Cazorla. Mo, frightened, he says with unexpected coldness, extending his hand to me. When was I afraid? I wonder. About 10 days ago. I try to recollect all the events of the last fighting days and confidently answer. Never say, this is slander. I never chickened out. In battle, maybe not cowardly. But when I received the order to transfer to a new unit, I asked for a place and stayed. What are you doing here? Cazorla suddenly asks. I tell about the trip to the wounded Delbal, his suffering and my return to the unit tomorrow.
You'll have to stay, says Cazorla. I will inform the battalion that you will not return. Tomorrow morning at 8, report to headquarters and we'll go to San Martin. You'll take Delbal's place as commander of the Fernando de Ros battalion.
For the 3rd day, I've been living at Lapardo Barracks in Madrid. The unit I command has been recalled from the front. It's an ineffective battalion. Its men have not lived up to their high rank. Many of them are notorious degenerates. The battalion must be manned and in 2 weeks will go to the front. Every day 9 hours are allotted to formation and rifle training. In the evenings the soldiers spend at the newspaper with their commanders. I tell the units about the friendly army family, which I miss dearly, the 4th Battalion of Lucande. My stories keep the listeners interested. Every day new recruits come in, peasants, students. The battalion should have 700 men. Then it will be manned. Every day I find an hour to sit by Delbal's bedside. He's on the road to recovery. Snatched from death, says Professor Olivares, literally brought him back from the dead. Luis isn't talking yet. The bullet grazed his tongue and Delbal can't pronounce a single word, even the shortest, correctly. Unhappy, he wrote to me when he learned that I'd been appointed to take his place. Remember that there is no better battalion in the world than ours, the 4th. He is not so hopeless, I replied. We will prepare a surprise for your recovery and make the battalion a strike battalion. He listens to me and writes.
I wish you good luck.
Soon there will be 700 of us. Where will we be sent? Who are we going to meet? Tanks have appeared on the fronts. A lot is written and talked about them. Fast Italian tankets and heavy German tanks. Cause a lot of trouble to the Republican units, not yet accustomed to fighting with a new enemy. Should we, like the Asturian miners, become dynamiters? Commander Caminos and I are suddenly passionate about the idea. No one has as much opportunity as we do, he says, because we have 6 days to prepare. We make a calendar of grenade launcher squad training and head to Cazorla's office. He listens to us attentively, but outwardly seems indifferent. The men will be happy to know that they are entrusted with such a responsible task. I try to convince Cazorla. No, that's not what makes him agree. It is well thought out, and most importantly, by the way, ye agrees. Finally, Cazorla, ye aye. It is necessary to disable hundreds of tanks of the interventionists and show them that they cannot act with impunity. We are given 4 more days to prepare. Now we have 10 days at our disposal. We'll start training grenade launchers. This is a new endeavour, but we take it on with courage and determination.
In the yard of the barracks moves plywood model of a tank. We throw training grenades, put under the tracks of the tank bundles of grenades, put in its path fuses. In short, all means to prepare the death of the enemy.
Each fighter knows well the purpose of these activities. We are covered with grenades. This is our main weapon. Orders are given by whistle. Cazorla brings us a tank captured from the fascists. We gut it to pieces. A grenade launcher must know all the strengths and weaknesses of his armoured enemy. The soldiers are so enthusiastic about their new profession that they demand to be sent to the front early. "It's time to defuse, comrade captain," says to me fighter Gordillo, already not an old peasant. "It's enough to scare one Catalan." Catalan, an 18-year-old lad, considered the most undisciplined in the battalion, is the tank driver. He sits behind the plywood armour and pedals the layout into motion. Catalan used to be a real slacker. To sit somewhere in the shade, quietly humming and think that you are doing now the most wonderful of all earthly things? Nothing to do, he said dreamily. This idler even ran away from the barracks, and when he came back we decided to give him a show trial as an example to the other idlers. "We will try you for desertion," I announced to Catalan. "You have the right to choose your own defence counsel if you wish." He quickly found one and answered.
Thank you for that right. I choose you."
Catalan spoke to everyone on you, was rude, but cheerful, volunteered to serve in the army, liked to brag about his wanderings in the world, and for all his faults seemed to me a capable guy. "All right, I'll be your defence counsel. I also switched to you with my court-martialed soldier." The 1st Battalion trial took the whole evening. The prosecutor was Caminos, a law student. It was his first practice. He demanded a year in prison for the accused. I asked to mitigate the fate of Catalan and promised on behalf of my client that he will show in future battles true heroism. All the fighters were present at the trial. They hotly debated Catalan's deed. Most supported the prosecutor, but the court still acquitted the deserter, and now he is on a plywood tank tirelessly pedalling, preparing for the general review of the battalion before being sent to the front. Oh, he'll show everyone he's not a coward or a deserter. We'll discharge soon. I reassure Gordillo very soon. Visionaria, Cazorla are coming. With their grenades, the soldiers aptly hit a variety of targets placed in the huge courtyard of the barracks. An unimaginable smoke screen envelops La Pardo. The examination is complete. The men are happy, but I must disappoint them.
It's easy to hit a plywood tank. It's another thing to destroy a real German or Italian tank.
We won't be frightened. Shout excitedly grenade launchers. You must chicken out. I insist and tell my amazed subordinates what a coward was their captain Diestro in the first battle. The men are confused and don't know whether to believe it or not. Then I quote to them the words of Felice Lucandi, that the brave man is the one who has managed to overcome cowardice. That's probably true. Someone agrees and everyone laughs. At night I sit down to write to Lucandi. I write to him that these days, for the first time, I feel that I have passed a great school in my life. This school is your battalion, dear Felice. I wish you happiness and victory. Wish me the same, and if you continue to have low-end commanders, let them go. It seems to me that the pupils of your school will be able to benefit the motherland. We are called grenade launchers. That's our official name. It's written on the banner carried by little Tors. He is the same age as Gaffos, 15, but he never chickens out. He is one of the bravest grenadiers and a general favourite. There was a fine machine gunner in the 4th Battalion. His name was Thors too. He was 3 times taller than you. We nicknamed him Black for the colour of his skin. I tell our standard-bearer about the man who made me overcome my cowardice.
On the banner is embroidered, "In the name of the Italian anti-fascist Fernando de Rossa A battalion of grenade launchers.
We're all laden with grenades. The battalion is subordinate to the Committee of Defense of Madrid and day and night on his orders rushes to where the columns of enemy tanks crawling, where especially formidable his onslaught and where it is necessary at all costs to stop and destroy the enemy. Cold February night. In the barracks Lepardo extinguished lights. Only the sentries are awake. Today is the 21st. On this day exactly 7 months ago, I was supposed to leave for England to work in the representative office of Republican Spain. But the diplomat has turned into a fighter, and all his meetings with no foreigners take place not at receptions and audiences or noisy banquets, but at the front. The foreigners I am dealing with are the Italian-German Expeditionary Corps. This meeting is to be today. It's not without reason that the sentry wakes me up. Not in, comrade captain. Urgent telephone call. I hear a familiar voice. At the phone, one of the prominent military staff of the defense headquarters of Madrid. Yes, sir. Immediately arrive at headquarters. A few minutes later, I arrive at the headquarters where one never sleeps. Here, bent over maps, they study the enemy's plans and devise plans for his defeat. From here, they invisibly control us on the battlefield, sending reinforcements and preventing breakdowns. Here, where life boils round the clock, where night never relaxes the feverish tension of the day, silence reigns, and only the light crackle and dry clicking of communication devices tell that this silence is deceptive. I am met by a tall military man. He seriously and strictly talks about our task. Fulfills a big plan conceived by the command, a very big one. And let it not seem to you in a moment of insurmountable difficulty that you are alone. Warns me staff officer. We remember each of you. The order is short. At 1 o'clock in the morning to load into trucks and leave for the village of Parla. There we shall receive further instructions. We load up, and at 3 o'clock in the morning we arrive in the village. The front commander, a colonel, is waiting for us at headquarters. The mission is very clear. We need to occupy the town of Torrejón, 10 kilometers from the village of Parla, and here, at the cost of any sacrifices, to delay the enemy for at least 2 hours. If this succeeds, we will help to fulfill the great plan of the command and will contribute to the success that awaits the Republican units on this front. I explain to the men our task. At 5 o'clock in the morning, that's the order. We must go on the attack. We will be supported by an armoured train. I am once again warned at headquarters that I must rely only on myself, that 700 men is all that the Republic can allocate today to occupy Torrejón. Long live the Republic. We reply to the front commander. Flight from the village of Parla to Torrejón, 10 kilometers. More than half of this distance we pass by forced march. 4 kilometers from Torrejón, the men of the grenade launcher battalion take up positions behind large rocks. At 4:45 in the distance grow 7 tanks. They walk with their elastic gait, swaying on their heavy tracks like a wave. Do they know we're here? Or maybe it's just tank reconnaissance? No, they know everything about us. Otherwise, the lead tank wouldn't be felling lonely trees. The enemy wants to intimidate us. 4 tanks disappeared into the ravine. A moment later they reappear. The tanks stand out sharply against the white background of snow. We lie still, waiting for them to cross the cherished line, where the grenades of the shock battalion will stop them forever. No, do not shoot. I give a command along the chain of fighters. In no case do not shoot. The commanders remind the mech. Thus, shoot when you hear 3 whistles. The whistle is in my mouth. The rumble of engines is getting closer and closer. Suddenly the rumble of the engines is joined by the crackle of machine guns. So the tanks have spotted us. Bullets lay down around us, rock fragments fly up. Only if the precise and strict sense of time had not changed, and I would have signalled the bombing without delay. 4 tanks are coming at us. Catalan is lying next to me. Do you think, Captain, he asks, how much faster than my plywood box are they going? The tanks are rushing across the smooth field, crushing the rocks. It's time to whistle. I give the signal so that all the soldiers, now lying behind the rocks, throw the prepared grenades at the tanks. At the first whistle we tear the ribbon on the grenade with our teeth. At the second whistle the grenade is already in the left hand. The third whistle coincides with a jerk, and the right hand sends a grenade at 30 meters. Yes, the calculation is correct. After the explosion of our grenades, the tanks stopped. Macaroni, why did you stop? Gordillo shouts. Crawl another meter. Well, what do you want? Catalan laughs. The fighters jump up and start dancing, shouting and hugging each other in full view of the padded steel fortresses. Get in position. I give the command. Get down immediately.
But there's no time to lose. We see how quickly go away 3 tanks, stopped behind the ravine. They take away accurate information about us.
That's why, not lingering near the 4 broken cars, almost falling to the ground, we short jerks, stopping every 5 meters, moving forward. Suddenly the first gunshots were heard. Oh, hurrah, our armoured train. We shouted and rushed forward. The enemy's mortars are shooting straight ahead. We distinguish already Moroccans, Germans and Italians. We must get closer. We can't hide behind this hill. I think I can guess the fighters' desire to stop for a second. They're only a kilometre from Torrigian. I shout and point ahead. Snipers gaze at the life-saving cover ahead of them. These are small knolls. Behind them, we should all... One last push. Only 100 meters to go. No runner in the world can outrun us now. We're not firing. All we hear is the stomping of feet and the breathing of men. The enemy, too, is running to those saving knolls. Who will take them first? We fall right on the target. The enemy has to run about 30 to 40 meters more. Fire, friends. We shoot the enemy at point-blank range with rifles and pelt him with grenades. I rise from behind the cover with the words of our anthem red banner. Us, forward, grenade throwers. Only now I see that we are not so many. Of the 700 who a few hours ago slept peacefully in the barracks of Madrid, there are few left. But this is not the time to make a fearful reckoning. The song is as loud as if all 700 men were singing. Forward, friends. The enemy has turned. Now the targets are the backs of the fascists. I can already hear one of them shouting in Italian. Don't run, you devils. Yes, we are few. I see it again when a huge shell raises a cloud of smoke in which the whole battalion disappears. But not for a second is the song of our red banner silent.
Stotes, forward, friends. I'm not the only one shouting, but all the soldiers.
How panic-stricken the enemy is fleeing. We jump over the rifles thrown in our way or set like traps. Here are the first houses of the town of Torrigian. In the street I come face to face with a tall blonde man, and now I could unmistakably recognize him among millions of people. A terrible pain in my shoulder fogs my consciousness. I manage to fire a line from my automatic weapon. The tall German is running. The bullets have not caught up with him, but he left his friends at the machine gun. They will never see him again. We jump over their bodies and rush on with a song that never stops. My right arm, it won't obey. I stop. Catalan, not a step behind me, quickly ties my hand with a handkerchief. Come on. I only managed to shout during this brief stop. We reach the central square. In a town of 3,000 inhabitants, there is not a living soul left. Can we hold it for at least 2 hours? That's what headquarters said. We can hold it if we remove the machine gun nest from the top of the church in the centre of the square. From the bell tower, they're mowing down our lines. We're laying low and shelling the church to no avail. We need 4 volunteers, I say.
Everyone wants to be in the fore.
These 4 will do. I refuse the rest of the brave men.
I explain the task to Achilles, a student of philosophy at the University of Madrid, the blacksmith little Tamus, the peasant Gordillo, and we divert the attention of the fascist machine gun, and they, taking advantage of this, penetrate the open doors of the church and, climbing the stairs, destroy with grenades the entire team of machine gunners on the bell tower.
And 4 crawl toward the church, the only building in the town where the enemy is still sitting. We intensify fire on the bell tower. But why is the enemy so frugal with his supplies? Has he not spotted the 4? Will they make it? But after 15 minutes we hear a strong explosion, and from above, from the bell tower, flying pieces of brick, fragments of walls, dust. The machine guns of the Italo-Germans are silent. In the small window of the bell tower, in the veil of dust, Thomas appears and shouts loudly for all Torrigi. Sens, here we are. The last armed point in Torrigian has been destroyed. We run to the bell tower. Gordillo and Thomas cautiously climb down. They are carrying little Torres. He is badly wounded. And the philosopher stayed there. Gordillo sorrowfully informs and points to the bell tower.
Our hero, Achilles, a brave fighter, is dead. This death cost the enemy dearly. All 15 machine gunners, Germans and Italians, fell at the hands of Achilles' friends.
Now do not surrender the city. Only 2 more hours of endurance, and we will fulfill the order of the Republic. We go to the opposite edge of the city. 2 fighters run to the village of Parla, to the headquarters of the front commander. They will tell about the capture of Torrejon and ask for help. An hour and 20 minutes later, one of the messengers returns. He reports. The front commander congratulates on the victory and asks to report that there will be no help. There is no one to send. For 2 hours we withstood the counterattack. Every house is a fort. We leave it only when the walls collapse. So we move from one house to another, crowded by a well-armed and numerous enemy. And when we have not a single cartridge or grenade left, we say goodbye to Torrejon. The Grenadier Battalion, having held off the enemy, allowed its units to regroup and pull up fresh forces. We returned the same way. On the way we met our comrades. The dead dynamite fighters, soldiers of the revolution, lay silent. Let's go on, comrades. Blood is flowing from the wound. There is a continuous noise in my head. I walk ahead and see how the fighters shorten their step so as not to overtake me. My legs refuse to serve, and I suddenly fall unconscious.
I'm carried by 2 comrades. Waking up and seeing myself in their arms, I want to walk on my own. The soldiers stop. Suddenly one of them falls. He was hit by a stray bullet. This is our last victim on this memorable. We line up at headquarters, and I report to the front commander.
The Grenade Launcher Battalion has arrived at your disposal, having fulfilled the Republic's mission. They're taking us in cars to Madrid, the healthy ones to Alapado, the wounded to hospitals. It was already dark when the car stopped at the familiar Sign Hospital Ophthalmico. A few minutes later I see Julia. Back to us again, she says brokenly and threatens me with her finger. Couldn't you read in all those books how to avoid doctors and nurses? The medical staff is no longer fussy today, as it was when I first came here. Don't cut. I warn the surgeon. I still need to fight, doctor, and without a right hand I will be sent to you to read newspapers. He willingly promises to fulfill my request. But in the eyes of the old surgeon, it is easy to read that my pleas are in vain, and my arm is hopeless. At night when I am carried away for a blood transfusion, the doctor on duty shows me a package received from headquarters. The package is addressed to me. The doctor opens the envelope and in a chilled voice reads the order of the Minister of War that Captain Ramon Diestro, 22 years old, of the Grenade Launcher Battalion, has been promoted to Major.